Today's episode is with a dynamic, vibrant self-starter. She's worn multiple hats in media, tech, startups, and investments, co-founding a global media company, a female business accelerator, a femtech startup, and currently heading a community building consultancy. A two-time TEDx speaker and a recipient of the Forbes 30 Under 30 award, there is nothing too big for her to tackle. The most accomplished yet humble entrepreneur I've met to date. Mashal, welcome to Failures and Beyond.
Thank you for having me. And that sounded so grand.
It's true. And look, you're giving me goosebumps. Can you validate the fact that I have goosebumps on my arm? Seriously, I actually was trying to reduce as much as I could write about you so I could do it in less than a minute. But I was like, I can't. And there is so much you've accomplished, which is why I'm so happy you're here.
Thank you.
And I'm so thrilled that you're ready to share your stories because you are an open book. And that's what I love about you. You're authentic, you're real. And I think your whole journey is so inspiring for people. That's why I'm so happy you're here. Yay. Whatever you're wanting to achieve, you literally set that as a goal and you just go for it. So what I want to know is, what has been the most challenging experience for you as you are on your ambitious journey that has potentially just made you stop in your tracks and relook at the whole thing?
I feel like every project in itself.
Sometimes, yes, they do. That's true.
It's like there's so many parts. Where do I start? There have been a few moments, I think, and one of the first ones was with my first startup. This is when I decided to leave. And that was a project that was so close to my heart. And I had put in so much of myself into it. You know, I'd forgotten myself as a person. And the way that I would describe myself was legit with that startup. And so I think that was one of the hardest things I had to do. But I also think it was my best decisions. And I think every time I've had to walk away from a project or I've stepped away because of boundaries that I've had to learn to build, I think that's sort of coming to that point. And again, therapy's helped a lot with that. But learning to realize that you don't need to be connected to everything forever. You know, you can play your role and you can walk away and you can still grow in the project and continue growing. And it can be in a healthy, good way. So I think farewells don't always have to be sad in that way. And yeah, there have been a lot of projects like that where, but I'd say one of the most challenging ones was one that I was not public about at all. It was very behind the scenes and it was supposed to be one of the biggest projects I'd been a part of. I was in rooms that were way out of my depth with VVIPs in every meeting. And it was a very different level of what we were trying to do. And the person I was working with turned out to be a terrible business partner. And as one of let's just say because I was younger and this person was very renowned, had a lot of experience in this space, I just trusted her word on things like legal things like regulation and incorporation and things like that. You know, when you just trust people because you expect them to just,
or they have a certain level of credibility that you kind of buy into and you think they're going to guide you.
Yeah. And they've had successful ventures. So you really don't, it's not even about guiding. It's just about doing what you say you're going to do. So things like incorporation and things like that. And it was one of my biggest lessons because it was the first time I put my livelihood in someone else's hands from a residential, just a basic visa perspective. And when I realized that this person had done nothing that they were supposed to have done, and it was the first time I felt like, oh wait, like this will really impact me. And I completely decided to cut ties and I walked away from that project. And I decided never again am I going to think just because someone's more experienced or I'm younger that I'm not going to do due diligence at every stage of the project. I'm going to be involved in every single part of it from a legal side, and everything that I should know, I will ask for. It's not disrespectful. It's just business. So I think just separating business from friendship, from personal relationships, I think that's been my biggest lesson.
That's really powerful because I think if you do start a venture or you start a partnership with someone, and let's say you have a history with them, there is an unsaid trust element that comes into play. And then you just see how much is that true? Because I think for some people, it can be really, really hard to accept that. I don't want to use the word betrayal, but ultimately there's no other word that I can use, that on some level, they don't do what they're supposed to do. They don't live up to their roles and responsibilities. They don't follow through with their end of the partnership. And then it can actually have a heavy impact on what you have to do and how you show up. And they're not supporting you. And I think any level of partnership, there needs to be a shared agreement between who's doing what. And you don't have to stick to it. It can never be 50-50, I don't think. But you need to be able to be fluid enough to say, look, today I've only got 30 and you need to cover the rest of the 70. And you just have to have that fallback system that they're there for you. And if you realize they're not, that's a huge, huge wake-up call. So you then took that and realized that you were going to do your due diligence in all avenues, cover all bases.
All avenues. I also decided I would never put my personal livelihood into someone else's hands. And it's when I decided to set up my consultancy and completely go solo in terms of independence and working. I've always had a partner in almost all my projects before. And I decided this time it would just be me.
Okay, so that's an interesting point. How did it feel going from always having a partner to doing it solo?
It was liberating in ways. I wasn't, I could do whatever I wanted. It comes with pros and cons, I think, though. The pros, of course, you have the freedom to do whatever you want. And not to say you don't when you have a partner. I just think it's, it's a partnership's different. And I think I had the freedom to explore whatever I wanted to do, even if it didn't make sense to anybody else, because I wasn't really answerable to anyone else, right? It's my own funding. It's my own business that I've set up, and I can do what I want. And it's okay if it doesn't make sense to folks from a strategic perspective, the kind of projects. And I think the biggest thing, though, was the financial unlocking, because the kind of rates actually I started setting for myself, the value I knew I was bringing to the table, and that has completely shifted how I approach projects financially. I don't think, I think for years I've undervalued myself so much.
Oof, that's a huge one. I think there are points where I still undervalue myself, and it's a learning curve that I hope. I don't know. Is there a point where you will get to knowing this is my value, I'm never going to change that? Or is it that because sometimes you do forget. You forget how much you've achieved. You forget how much you've contributed to whatever the project might be, or the business, or just an idea. And you need to take that point of reflection and just think, wow, this is what I've achieved in all this time. That moment of self-reflection is really important. And I think remembering how much value we actually bring to the table, it's so powerful.
Yeah.
It's huge.
Yeah. And I don't know why we tend to forget that sometimes, right? It just, one of my best ways of anytime, and that's something anytime I work with teams, right? And if it's a media project and they're like underpricing and like feeling so uncomfortable with charging because they're like, oh, our audience isn't that great. I'm like, okay, here's a wake up call for y'all. So what I'm going to do is I get competitor rates from every single media company in that space, charging for the same exact product with a similar audience. And when you have the numbers and you can compare, there's a few zeros missing. You're like, oh, wait, what? And that immediately unlocks, wait, we can ask for more. And I think, again, even with personal projects, that's the way to go. Like, look at what others charge. Really understand the space. And I think this is where it takes a bit of, this is uncomfortable for people, but I feel like we should be more transparent in terms of projects, because I just, it helps everybody.
It could be sometimes that we just don't think it's possible. Like maybe we're not okay with asking for something that we have been told, this is your ceiling. I don't think you should be going. You just started, you don't have much experience. You don't have a big portfolio. Maybe that's the best you can ask for. But I've seen on the flip side, there are people who have a huge belief in themselves. They don't necessarily have the skills to back it up. They don't always focus on delivering high quality or, that level of service that you would expect with the number that they're charging.
Yeah.
but they have no problem with saying, this is what I'm worth and this is what I want on the table. And I look at that, and at the beginning, it used to irk me because I used to think to myself, the audacity. But then I realized it was just triggering me because they were doing what I didn't have the capacity to do. I didn't have the belief in myself to sit there and say, you know what, Farah, you've been doing this for like over 20 years and you are not comfortable enough to go and say, I want this number. Why? Who is telling you that this is how you have to limit yourself? I had to reframe how I saw myself. And I think there is a lot of people who are somehow weaving that little course to work for them, and they don't have the skills to back it up. So let the people who know how to show up and who have the passion for what they do, and they will over deliver, they need to have the belief in themselves. How can we get to that point where people actually feel that they are valid enough to ask for whatever number they want?
I mean, first of all, I think what you said is blowing my mind, because I'm like, that is a deep level of introspection and just awareness.
You have to go through that level.
Yeah. How do you believe in yourself? There's so many different ways. There's no like one right answer. And I've struggled. I've had my highs and lows in this. Having friends who believe in me has been really, really great in that way. But more than friends or support system or any of that, you have to believe in yourself, because if you, I think on a very factual level, and there was a point where I've been part of ventures where my self-esteem had hit as low as it could have hit, like rock bottom. I'd question myself, and I almost had to remind myself, wait, no, I can do this. And my way of doing that was I would actually I've typed up a document with all the things I'm proud of that I've done, just tangible numbers. No one can mess around with facts and numbers, right? Literally just type up a list of the numbers of things you've done over time. And at the end of it, you're like, damn, I've done that.
So it's like your little personal fact sheet.
Yeah. And anytime something's going well, and I say this for all projects, anytime you do anything, document it. Even if it's for personal projects, it will help you. Just being organized in that way, I feel like that works for me. So even now when I'm doubting myself, sometimes I might watch something that's inspiring, but that's very short term, right? I think the real high that you get from having done a really good job, I think one part of it is exposure. Ask for it, and ask for it in a way where you're okay to walk away. When you can walk away, there's power in that. And that always helps, make me feel like I don't need the project, even if I do.
Sure.
But I think a lot of it, and this is where, again, right, it goes back to a few different things. I think you're in a different place when you don't have financial savings and a backing.
Definitely.
Versus when you do.
Yes.
And I've seen my own attitude change, even projects. I'm okay walking away because I know I'm okay. I'm good at the end of the day. Versus when I didn't. And then it was a lot harder.
Yeah, your decision-making process is just totally different.
Yeah. And I think at the end of it, not every client is for you. Not every project is for you. Yeah. And so be around people that are going to make you feel great. And it's okay if you have to put up with whatever for a short amount of time, but just long-term, it's not sustainable. It will drain you if you're constantly feeling like you need to prove yourself. Just remove yourself out of that situation. That's what I've done with projects where I felt like it's gotten to a point, and this isn't someone saying a snide remark or whatever. If you're in an environment where you're constantly feeling like you have to prove yourself and show up, and it's just everything's a battle, and it's just this, is it worth it? So maybe you just need a different market to look at. Maybe you need a completely different kind of client, or partner, or working space. Yeah.
I think it also comes down to know yourself well enough to realize what are your motivating factors. Because I know plenty of people, especially in sales, who are very driven by challenges. So they enjoy having to prove themselves on a daily basis. What would you say is an experience that helped you fail forward? Could be something along the lines of maybe it was a rejection that you found was more of a redirection. It could be that you learned faster by failing more. These different concepts of what failures helped you to progress in your business.
Personal relationships, right?
Sure.
Working with people who you consider, and again, don't consider people you work with family. I don't think that's healthy. This has been one of my biggest shifts. I remember at a time when a workspace felt like family, and now it's like, no, we're colleagues and we're on the same team. It's like a sports team versus family. I think that's a separation you should always have. We're going to work towards things, but then you go back and you need to have a life. Don't let it all be mixed up and jumbled up. Because what happens is then lines get blurry and boundaries get crossed, and I think that's it's not good for anybody.
Wow, that's really interesting insight, because I didn't look at it like that. I mean, yeah, there are obviously people who keep saying, you know, my colleagues or my family, my business is my baby, and they really personalize it and they attach that whatever entity it is to them. So then if it doesn't work out, it becomes a personal failure rather than it was a professional mistake or a professional downfall or whatever it might be. But there is a level of liability that you are supposed to attach to a business. So having that distinction like you've done, it's very mature, and it's in the concept of make sure that you have that separation. That these are the people, yes, you're aligned to the same vision, yes, you're working on the same project, yes, but they have their own space and you have a personal space which is separate to that.
Yeah.
That's really powerful. Tasjil.ae are the fastest growing UAE domain and hosting provider. Exclusive only to FabDXB subscribers, benefit from 50% discount on their hosting services by using the promo code FabDXB. Just visit tasjil.ae and you can elevate your online presence.